Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. #Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. And of course, now and always, keep hustling. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Maverick Pitchford. Maverick, thank you for being here.
Man, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to get to be on your podcast, and I'm excited to get to dive in with you.
Well, I appreciate you, but more importantly, I think that it's great for the podcast, for the listeners, for the network, for hustlers all over the world to have a guy whose name is Maverick Pitchford and anyway associated with anything I'm doing. So I'm all in on that.
Yeah, man, the name is definitely something that's fun. It brings a little bit of attention and gets you in the door sometimes when you wouldn't otherwise. So.
Just for the record, for the listeners out there, you have a dog whose name is?
Goose, yeah.
Just making sure. Just making sure for all you out there. And if you don't get the reference, I don't usually try to turn away listeners, but if you don't get the reference, just hit the unsubscribe button and just move along. And or be respectable, ask someone who's older, more mature, and smarter, and go see the movie, and then we can go from there. So how's that?
What's crazy is I was recording a podcast with Bradley Flowers the other day, brought up the same thing, and he had never seen Top Gun. Blew my mind.
Okay,
it's a real issue.
I have. Wow. Okay, I'm going to call him right after this and immediately tell him that he's going on to. I have very few people on my phone block list, but you're wow.
Yeah, awful.
Okay, awful. Okay, and I'm not. And by the way, I'm not talking about the new age one. We're not talking about that.
No.
Don't give me that.
It's good. But I like the original.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump right in. So, first of all, you're from a very large town, so we know that there's a lot going on there. Where are you from?
So, Coweta, Oklahoma, about 25 minutes east of downtown Tulsa. So we're down 10,000 people.
I've said this a couple times on the podcast, but I'm relatively certain here. The statistical likelihood of me coming to visit you is, I'm not sure how close to zero, but it's hovering just around zero. I might be passing through one time, so I'll stop by. But you can come to New York anytime you want.
I'll try not to take offense to that. We don't have a lot of people come our way.
So take us back. What do we need to know about the upbringing of Maverick Pitchford that put him where he is as the agency owner and just insurance guru that you are today, and just kind of take us through what put you in that chair. By the sick office setup, if you're watching on video. Sick office look. The guy's got basically a podcast studio. He's got the background lights, the chair, the bookcase, the whole thing's going on. So
before long, we're going to be getting a Bison Ridge sign up there above the shoulder.
That's it. And I think the clock is broken. I'm pretty assuming the clock is broken. Pretty sure that
only flips. I honestly can't even read that kind of clock anyways. I need digital all the time.
Here we go. All right, let's tell us.
Yeah, so I grew up and have lived in Oklahoma my whole life. And if I think back to kind of what put me in this position, I think being an only child has very much formatted a lot of my life. I think that being an only child has made me naturally inquisitive, made me go into situations and know that I need to go out of my way to make, friends and make, acquaintances and be the person that brings it in. Because I'm not at home with 5 or 6 brothers and sisters that I'm going home and playing with, right? It's just me and my single mom. And so I think that that has led me to a road of never being afraid to ask questions, never being, checking my pride at the door and saying, hey, I want to learn from you. And I think that in the insurance industry, that has been huge. I mean, that's exactly how you and I met. I saw your content online and I said, this dude is doing something that I'd like to learn more about. Let me message him and figure out if I can talk to him. And I mean, I've done it probably over 100 times now with other insurance agents around the nation. No one has said no. Everyone is very open to helping out.
So I think there's something interesting there. And maybe another part of what you were saying or mentioning is that I think I am not an only child. We're going to get into that in a minute. But you also probably have to be resourceful in keeping. I mean, you have to sometimes be content with entertaining yourself.
Yeah.
So I think it's not just about being inquisitive, but it's also like, if you're going to put your head down, I'll say it this way. if I were to do what you did and went out on my own, literally in my grandmother's living room,
Mhm.
part of that grind would be very hard for me to associate with.
Yeah.
Because as you know, I'm an identical twin. So I've literally always I've never had my own room in my whole life. Never,
Mhm.
never. So,
Yeah.
so that like alone scares me a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think in this case, it's an advantage because it's like I can do it alone. I'll hire people. I want to build a business and things like that.
Right.
But in the end of the day, I can sit for 8 hours and focus and entertain myself or work myself and achieve the goal that I'm trying to achieve, which is awesome. I never knew that you were an only child, so I
Yeah.
love that. What did your mom say when you kind of jumped out on your professional journey?
So behind my wife, my mom is the most supportive person that there is. It's very much. I think that everyone in my inner circle, my mom, my grandma, my wife, all educators, right? No one in business. So whenever I said, "Hey, I'm going to open a business that one, I have no one that I know that runs a business like this. Two, I've only been in insurance for a year. I'm going to start my own agency. Let's figure this out." It's very much like, well, if he says he's going to do it, I mean, let's give him a chance to see what he does. And I think that has been incredibly important in my journey. I was talking to an agent the other day and told him that I was either just dumb enough to not know what I was doing, or brave enough. I don't know which way you want to label it, but I think I was just blinded by the fact that I had a goal and I was going to accomplish it. And so she was very supportive. My wife is extremely supportive. I mean, I literally could not be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for her. And so both of them have been the backbone to this stuff.
How many siblings does your wife have?
Just two sisters. They're all 18 months apart. So
Okay.
incredibly tight knit family. Obviously typical small town stuff. I live 5 minutes east of my in-laws. I live 6 houses away from my brother and sister-in-law. So I mean, it's very close knit. And so that was
Did
one
you guys
thing
know
that.
each other growing up?
Yeah, so my wife and I actually started dating in high school. We
God,
dated our
tell
senior
me
year.
something more
Yeah,
Southern.
I know.
And I was a football player, and she was a cheerleader, and we just went to the senior dance together, and then we had
Yeah,
babies.
exactly. Yeah, my wife was homecoming and prom queen, and I was not as high achieving in high school. I look back and I probably was extremely lazy in school, and so
Way out punted your coverage here. Let's be honest.
yeah, oh for sure, for sure. But she doesn't know that, so I'm good.
Well, hopefully she's listening. And for the record, for the listeners who don't know, Maverick Pitchford is the proud father, being an only child. Not only, if you don't think God has a sense of humor, he has 3 sons, I believe.
Yep.
And 2 of them are twins.
Yep.
So, only child, God got the last laugh.
Yeah. So
and I can say that because I'm a twin.
3 boys, all under 3. So
I'm allowed to say, because I'm a twin, that you say you enjoy it and it's not so bad. I heard the stories from my father, especially.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you don't have to lie to me.
I've got to tell everyone, all your listeners, when I told people that I was having twins, every single person I said was, everyone was, "Oh, that is so amazing. You're so blessed. Congratulations." I told Aaron, he was the only person that was blatantly honest with me and said, "You're a complete idiot. What are you doing? How did you let this happen?" And that's kind of the foundation of our friendship, and I appreciate that.
Well, it's true, but you know that like one of my goals in life is that when I meet someone, I want within 2 to 5 minutes for them to know without any shadow of a doubt that I'm from New York. Yeah. And so that, and like from the core of the Big Apple. And so I think there's that. I do remember calling you an idiot, and for that I apologize. I think that you're a better man than I am. I think that being the father of twins and 3 you should follow Maverick on social media just because his kids are awesome. But anyway, we digressed away from the subject. So you were an only child. That led you to a lot of curiosity. And then somehow you found yourself in the insurance business, and then you decided to go out on your own?
Yeah. So quick high view, graduated college, came back to our hometown area and started working at a bank, a big regional bank that has branches from across 5 different states or so. And I realized pretty quickly that the owner of the bank was not going to step down to let old Maverick take over, CEO position. And I knew I was going to work for myself. So it was very much praying and saying, what's going to happen next? What are my opportunities? I got an opportunity with a captive carrier, completed their training program in 6 months, opened an agency, and had an agency for about 6 months. So I was with the captive carrier for about a year. Realized I was 22 at the time, and hey, I have a long way ahead of me in this industry, and I definitely think independent is the way I want to go. So we took the leap of faith and opened an independent brokerage about 3 years ago now, or 2.5 years ago.
So I want to dig in on a couple things there. First is I mentioned this before on the podcast. I love to rip on big businesses, but I think if you're a young person looking at starting your career, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we agree on this because I think we've discussed it before. The value of training in a large organization is unmatched.
Yeah, definitely. I'm incredibly grateful for the captive agency I was with, the captive carrier, because they let me get my foot in the door, get my toes wet. And like you said, that training was unmatched. It was just, very much onboarding at all times and very much, a really good view of what insurance was. I wouldn't say it was incredibly deep, just because the captives, they're limited on what they can sell. But getting insurance knowledge, learning I'm being honest with you, when I came into insurance, I think there's a lot of people this way. I didn't know what a deductible was. I didn't know, what dwelling coverage was, any of those things. So it was very good for me to learn that from them.
So I'll tell you a great story. I have one of my closest friends in college, and my brother and I were driving to Cleveland, Ohio, our senior year in college to visit him from New York City. And at the end of an 8-hour ride, I think it was, he gets pulled over getting off the highway. Now, we're 3 guys from New York, so whatever. Gets pulled over for speeding, and the first thing is this very scary looking state trooper pulls him over, and he gets out of the key, he leans over to the window and he says, "Son, what were you doing going 80 in my 40 or something like that?" And immediately my brother and I looked at him, whispered, and said, "Please don't say I'm not your son. Please don't say I'm not your son." This is like a scary state trooper guy. But then the guy asked him for his registration, his insurance card, and he said, "My wallet's in the back." He let him get out of the car, and he handed the guy his health insurance card. Honest to God. Now, the funny part of the story is he then came and worked in our agency.
Oh, how funny. That's great.
And I think that a lot of people, that is not uncommon. And what's great about the insurance industry, other than the amazing training that I think you received, is that unlike most other industries, the stability kind of goes hand in hand with the unknown. Mm-hmm. So few people know about it, so therefore it's an old school industry. And because it's an old school industry, nobody goes into it unless they have family or unless they fall into it somehow. But it's still, even after hundreds of years, this unknown. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "I want to be an insurance agent," when they're a kid, unless their family's in the business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Some people say, "I want to be a banker." Some people say, "I want to own a hedge fund." Even if you ask teenagers, nobody wants anything to do with insurance. So I think that's incredible. And it's also just, I know that. So what made you think, being in the town that you're from, understanding that the captive side gets a lot of those referrals and things like that directly, what made you see the value in, what made you think that independent insurance advisory was going to work?
Yeah, so I think that it was very much a numbers game. I saw the long runway I have in front of me before I get to an age where, I'm even thinking about selling or, stepping down as a leader, those type of things. And so I didn't want to grow someone else's book and then try to switch over at the age of, 40 or something like that. I was like, I might as well go ahead and take this risk now, knowing that I foresee myself being in the industry for a long time. And I think that was also coupled with the fact that I didn't really care that it was insurance, if it was real estate or whatever. When I started, it was, I just want to own my own business. I want to work for myself. I want to be my own boss. And I got in insurance just by happenstance. And I didn't feel like an employee. I felt more like an employee than a business owner there. And so it was very much like, well, the natural progression for me is to just open my own independent brokerage. Because then I truly am the business owner, right? There's no other Bison Ridge insurances in the world. And so, it's me. That's it. So that's what it came down to, I think.
I want to ask another question, then pivot back to something I'm thinking here. But take us to the most pivotal moment so far in your career. I think I know what it is, but the moment where you kind of looked in the mirror and said, "This is my moment," and what was going through your mind at that point, and how you pushed through it.
Yeah, I think that the most pivotal moment, truly, because I'm so early into the process, was just taking the leap of faith. Just saying, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start an agency that was just born in my head. Like I said, Bison Insurance is not a franchise of anyone else, nothing like that. It's truly was born from my brain. And so taking that leap of faith and having the conversation that I almost get emotional thinking about sitting at the kitchen table with Lauren, my wife, and saying, listen, I truly think this is my calling. I think that the opportunity here is huge. And I think that the life that it can lead for not only myself, my wife, but also my 3 boys, the legacy I can leave for them with this business is massive. And we're 22. So if it doesn't work out, I have a chance to start over and do something else. But when we committed, it was not like one foot out the door. It was very much, we're committed to this and we're going to do it and make it happen. So I think having that conversation at the kitchen table, her saying, give me 5 years. If it looks like we're not going to make it, we'll shut it down and start over somewhere else. But definitely just the leap of faith aspect.
Well, I'm going to press you on this.
Yeah.
Why are you saying that it's a leap of faith? It's not a leap of faith. You believed in something,
yeah,
and you had the skills to do it.
Yeah, I think the leap of faith is the unknown. I think the leap of faith is getting to the independent channel is a little scary. Coming from captive, there's not a lot of, I don't feel like there's a lot of information out there on how to get started. So there was a lot of
we keep it that way intentionally to keep people
exactly.
like you out.
Now I'm happy it's that way. I don't want
keep people like you out.
Exactly. Well, I broke through. So I think that, and I think that it was the faith that my wife and unknowingly my son, they have no choice. They're doing, they're my son, so they have to do whatever, we say on that kind of stuff. But they still, the faith that I know that my family had in me to create a business that's going to provide for us was the scary part, the leap of faith. It was more just betting on myself, not the industry. The industry it's proven that it's gonna, create great business, great businesses, and you can create a legacy. I mean, you guys are an exact example of that, right? But it's the faith of yourself, myself doing it.
What did your wife say?
Yes, she just said, "Let's do it. I trust you. We're going to do it." Now that doesn't mean she's ever been like, "Hey, what's going on here?" Hey, because during that first year, that first 2 years, I mean, even up to 6 months ago, it was very much how many policies have you sold this month? You're asking these questions because you're not really getting renewals, you're not getting that stuff, and so it was very much those questions. So it was never that she didn't check me or say, hey, are we we're still pursuing this, but she very much trusted me. She trusted in the fact that I was going to do it.
And I think that so many people, especially in our industry, but in any sales and service business that start out, they give up too soon. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot about what this podcast is.
Yeah.
Is like, I am sure that 6 months in, when you had a bad week,
yeah,
you might have said, I'm not sure about this. But now you can say the business is becoming more known. Yeah. You're probably getting some inbound leads, just like, not that you've stopped making those outbound reach. You're probably getting some inbound leads, and you're seeing the renewals. But had you given up 8 months in, you never would have seen the renewal, which is obviously what everyone talks about in our industry. But you can talk about it a lot, but so many people give up and don't hustle through that bad week or month, saying, wait, like I said, or at the very least, like what you said, give it 5 years or give it 3 years.
Yeah.
But for a year, we're not going to talk about shutting it down. I don't care. We could sell no policies. We're not going to shut it down because that won't be the hustle. You know what I'm saying? So that doesn't mean everything has to work, and that doesn't mean you have to stick with a bad idea.
Definitely.
But I feel like people today give up on decent ideas too soon, and therefore they don't become good ideas.
Yeah, I think that I very much had the mindset and explained to my wife that this is not a get-rich-quick plan, but it's a legacy plan for our family, right? This is something we're building for the future, and we need to get through these hard times. But that was the agreement we had. We sat down at the kitchen table and we said, okay, we're going to do this. And on the hard days, she picks me up. When I go home and, I have 30 service tasks to do and I didn't get to run any new business or anything like that, she said, hey, babe, we're doing this for a bigger cause. We're doing this, for the future. What you're doing, like, not many people at, 20, 23, 24 are doing this. And, we're in uncharted territories, and that's that's a scary feeling, but it's also a super encouraging feeling to be like, yeah, we are doing this. And so I pick her up on the days where she's like, hey babe, I haven't heard you talk about, because I'm very much, I brag, right? I come home and I do the balls, I'm like, heck yeah, we did this today. And she's like, hey, I haven't heard you talk about this lately. And like, hey, we're gonna make it through. I'm gonna keep grinding. I'm gonna keep making those outbound calls, and it's gonna snowball to an unimaginable point to where we're gonna look back in 5 years and be like, can you believe where we started? We started with 0 clients. That's wild. That's mind-boggling.
And I think that you have such an advantage because at such a young age you took the leap, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
So many people wait too long, and then it becomes more difficult. And when it's more difficult, your likelihood of success goes down. It's not a bad thing, but if you had 3 kids year one that you also needed to take to soccer practice, you would either feel like you're missing out on the family stuff or you're not giving it all at work. And no offense to little kids. I have a bunch of little kids, but like you missing a bedtime now for the sake of what you say is legacy building, which I want to talk about, but will enable you, in my view, to not miss a soccer game when the kid will remember.
Exactly. You and I have had these conversations off the podcast before. I know that the days I'm putting in, the long hours, we put in, all days, and then I go home and I put the kids to bed and I come back up to the office and work all night. Like, those are the days that in the future, when I'm at every sporting event, I'm at every field trip, I'm at everything, I'm going to be like, yeah, I did that because of the time I put in the past. We're just making investments in those future buckets that my kids are going to be, I just know they're going to be extremely grateful in the future.
The joke in our family is that my father, he should rest in peace, missed less family dinners than we did for basketball practice, for work.
Yeah, exactly.
And the hilarious thing, I don't know if we've ever discussed it, but this is actually the really hilarious thing about my childhood. My mother was my father's second wife. So during his first marriage, he traveled a lot. He was a younger salesman. It was for the internet, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then he made a conscious decision when we were born, my older brother and then my twin brother and I, to travel less. And the irony is, later in life, when we started working and traveling for business, my brothers and I, my father told us that he did this and he did that. And when we were kids, we never remember him traveling for business. We remember that once a year he went to a conference because he came back with all that stuff from the conference.
Yeah.
And we remember that we had, one of our largest running clients is in Delaware, that he would drive for the day to Delaware. So he would leave in the morning. He would be around when we left to school because he would leave right after we went to school, and then we wouldn't see him that night.
Yeah.
But
like, I think that's the beauty of our industry and being a business owner, is you can make those conscious decisions and be like I make a conscious decision that I'm not going to miss dinner and bedtime, but I'm going to come back up and work from 8 to 2 in the morning if I have to. But I have the flexibility to do that. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm doing.
Right, but the other piece is, when you choose a business like ours, there is something to seeing that and saying, I know what I'm building will make it even easier for me to do that in the future.
Yeah,
so then maybe I won't have to come back at 8 o'clock when my kids are going to sleep at 10. I won't have to come back at 11:30 and work. So I think that but just the ability, and this is why I'm really happy you're here on the podcast, to say, I'm going to ask you the direct question, and if you lie, I'll know you're lying because I think I know what the answer is, and that is have you ever regretted it? And I have to believe that there were times when you said, I'm not sure, but I'm going to hustle through it and just stay at it. And so many people give up too early.
Yeah, I would not sit here and lie to you and tell you that I have days where it's like, what am I doing? Like, because the situation I'm in. I have, a VA, and we're potentially bringing on a second VA, so I have a little back office help, but I'm very much I wear all the hats, right? So I can get on a podcast with you or the Insurance Guys podcast and talk to them and say, hey, all this stuff, and I get pumped up and I'm off here and I'm ready to go. But in 2 weeks, when it's a rainy Wednesday and I have 45 service tasks to do, I guarantee you that doubt is going to be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why am I doing all this? But then you just have to have the mindset that when you're like, oh no, I'm doing it for not now, I'm doing it for 10 years in the future. Whatever, I'm going to go travel for 2 weeks with my wife and not have anything keeping me from doing that. I'm doing that right now for the future.
You are the only person, first of all, that was super profound. You are the only person to mention twice in this podcast in 2 sentences that you're building a legacy for your wife and for your children and for your family.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? How do you define that?
I have to be honest with you here. I have to take like a deep breath and take a second because this is one. I'm not an emotional person, but this is one thing that gets me. I mean, I get very emotional about this because I have such big plans for the future and such big hopes and goals, and I believe deep down in my soul, I mean, core deep belief that I will make it there. And it's just one of those things that I don't, other than my wife, I truly do not care what anyone says. Like, I'm going to get to the goals that I have. I'm going to be the business that in 10, 15 years, they're going to be like, well, isn't that nice that Maverick has this business? And you know, I'm 35 at the time, and they're like, oh, he doesn't even seem like he works. He's out, you know, golfing or fishing or doing whatever.
What about your kids? What about when they say, oh, yeah, those are the Pitchfords. They got a easy lot. They can just go. They have a business they can go into. Talk about that.
Yeah.
Forget about you. What about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. That's it. That's one step further, right? It's for when my kids are young, but then it's also for whenever they're, you know, 25 and they're getting out of college and like, Dad, what do I want to do? Well, son, come work for us. And even if it's not for a long time, even if it's not something where they take over like you're doing, right? Even if it's just for the time being, I'm giving them an opportunity that I didn't have because of what I'm doing now. I'm building that legacy for them to have just an option to take over the business. If they don't want to, that's fine. But I want that to be an option on the table for them, or it wasn't for me.
I think that, God, man, I miss my dad now. The fact that you're thinking about that is incredible to me and inspirational in my hustle, because it means that when you have, just like you've already said, when you have those moments of doubt, you have that. And, you know, I don't think I've told this story in the podcast, but if I have, the listeners will stick with us. The first time I ever traveled by myself for business, I went to Chicago to a carrier sales training. And my father, he should rest in peace, his area of expertise was medical professional liability, medical malpractice insurance, and he managed programs for decades. And there was a part of the first session was on healthcare and medical professional liability at this carrier. And my father, he should rest in peace, he was the guy. We've all went to the conferences. We all know this guy. He was the guy in the front who always asked the first question when the presenter was up.
Yeah.
I sat in the back. And the head of healthcare for this very well-known carrier gets up. And we're a small business. You know that. We're a small business. We don't have 50 employees. We don't have multiple offices. We're just a regular mom and pop business. Yeah. We've been around for 55 years. But, you know, my parents built a business that's important to them, that structure. And the guy gets up there and he goes, literally opens his thing, says, I'm so-and-so. Where's Aaron Gordon? And I was like, oh, this is no bueno. Exactly. The line I say is I said a prayer that the floor should open up underneath me. And he points at me and says, everybody turn around. And he says, that guy's father is a legend.
That's awesome.
And it was awesome. And the most awesome part about that, the best part about that, was that I haven't forgotten it. And on the days when I have the exact same feelings you do, those 30 service tasks at 9:00, or that thing that you told someone you'd get them on a Friday for closing on a Monday, and it's Sunday night, you just want to get into bed and you remember it, which is a sickness that you and I both have, which we remember things right when we get into bed. I know exactly you're the same way like me. Right when you're about to say I'm done, you remember things, but that's great. I literally say, I can be a legend. Like a legend put me in here, and I want to be a legend too. That's not ego. I want my kids I want somebody to say to my kids, your dad's a legend.
Yep.
Not because that means that I made billions of dollars and I'm that good. Right. But like, that's that's something. And I think that when you build a business focused on legacy, you can actually do it because everything else goes away. Sales come and go. Good years, bad years, bonuses, no bonuses. My dad talks about that in January, the carrier bonuses that he got would determine if our family went on vacations that summer. If we did a staycation or went on vacation. Some years, yes. Some years, no.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's definitely something very special there. And I know, not to steal my friend and mentor Scott Howell's line, but I know one day they'll listen to this.
Yeah.
They may or may not care about insurance, and I hope your wife listens to this because she deserves to listen to this. But that moment at the kitchen table, I feel like you'll remember that for a long time.
Forever. Literally, it's something. It's a legacy defining moment. I mean, when we look back on where we're going to be in the future, we'll be like, I remember sitting in that small rent house at the table that we were given to someone because we couldn't afford a table, making a decision to grow a legacy that we had no clue we would reach. It's just, it's amazing.
When you're on the Pitchford Ranch, looking at your actual bison from Bison Ridge. That's the thing, right? Do people have bison? Is that like a thing you can have?
Yeah, it's actually a really big commodity here in Oklahoma. So, yeah.
Let me tell you what I've never come face to face with: a bison.
Yeah.
We don't have those in New York City. We have people that look and smell like bison, but we don't have actual bison.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Maverick Pitchford, you inspire me.
Yeah,
I can't wait. I can't wait till this legacy and this movie plays out in the incredible way it is. I hope I get to see you soon. We have a closing tradition on this podcast where we ask our guests to leave the audience with their favorite all-time or current inspirational quote.
Yeah.
And why. And
I have a sticky note. I have a sticky note right here on my computer. It says, "Do not forget the art of the possible," because I think that in a legacy growing business like this, the possibility is even more than I can imagine. I have some really lofty goals for my life and for my legacy of this business, and I think the possibilities are even bigger than that. And so I think that if you have that mindset of not forgetting the art of the possibility and the legacy, your why, right? My why is bigger than me. I'm not doing this as a pride thing. I'm doing this for more than making money. I'm doing this for my family, for my boys. When we talk about those days that are hard, it's easy to push through. It's easier to push through those days. Now, that doesn't mean the days aren't going to come. That doesn't mean they're not going to be hard to get through. But having that is a lot easier to push through it. So
there's a quote that I mentioned before on this podcast. It's not my quote, but there's a quote that I've mentioned on this podcast before that I saw in a video about a few months ago that really, really hit me. And that is, imagine how big you would dream if you knew you wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Anything is possible, but people who fear that failing of the possible make things impossible when anything is possible.
Exactly.
Jeff Bezos sold books out of an office and drove to UPS or FedEx, or USPS himself to deliver those. Yeah. And now he's one of the richest people in the history of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I look at those guys. I look at when I'm watching a sporting event. I see, an insurance agency that's sponsoring a sporting event. I just literally say, "Why not me? Why can't I do that?" There's nothing stopping me from reaching that point. So I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. I also want to just take a second and say thank you for being the inspiration that I need for my boys. I know I never met your dad. I've listened to him on podcasts. I've listened to you tell stories about him. And I can tell you that's the type of man I want to be, because I want my boys to, in the future, whatever the future podcast is, I want them to be hosting their podcast, whatever form of media that is, and be able to say, my dad did that, and I want to make sure it's noted to you that you and your dad are the inspiration that I'm building towards. It's amazing accomplishments you guys made. So
I appreciate you saying that. I can say that with all the confidence in the world, he would have made fun of you, where you're from, and your name more than I would have. You guys could have commiserated about having twins, because when he found out that he was having twins at almost 50 years old, my mother said it's going to be great, and he said no, it won't. She said it's going to be fun. He said no, it won't. And until almost his last day, he probably would have told you that it wasn't. In the end, great. When we were 30 years old and he had grandkids, life was great because he had. But I'm to the end, he's not one of those guys that lied and said it was fun. He said it straight out that the first 18 years were very difficult, and I really appreciate you saying that. And I appreciate you being the inspiration to me, because you know what? Sometimes you can get jaded being in a long-term family business. 55 years is a long time, and I try not to take things for granted. But I understand that there are people like you who are hustling a lot harder than I am. So thank you for inspiring my hustle.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good, and always keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. If you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.